Good morning, everyone, or I guess afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I know we have, viewers all around the world here for AVA. So the first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to say welcome back. I know we all had some great holidays, and I'm sure I did, and hopefully you all did too. But today, like usual, we're going to be continuing with AVA Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific. And today, as I have for the last couple of weeks before our little vacation, I'm joined by Mark Sorrow at Autodesk. Mark, how's it going?
I am good. Thank you very much. And by now, I should be your favorite French Canadian, I'm sure.
Absolutely. It might be the only French Canadian I personally know. So my favorite and least favorite. So
Love it.
So Mark is he's been on a couple of AVAs with us. Comes from a technical background at Autodesk. Now he's part of a large marketing team at Autodesk. To be able to share a lot of the technology with all of us, I'll let him go over a little bit of a background of what he does over there. But today we're going to be continuing our journey, right, to develop product data management strategies. So I think this is something that's really key and every organization can take advantage of, is kind of formalizing that data management process. Some people have Vault, some people use another system, some people use network drives. We want to be able to help you all build a strategy that's best for your organization to either meet things like compliancy, make your lives easier, make sure that things don't go out the door incorrectly, so on and so forth. So that's part of what we're going to go through today. Today's the third part of the series. If you missed the first two, they're on our YouTube channel. Go ahead and take a look at those afterwards. There's no watching order or anything. It's all just a general idea. But today we're going to be going over the actual processes required, right? So we've gone over data. We've gone over how to manage the people. Today we're going to be going over the process. So Mark, anything else to add before we get started here?
No, looking forward to it. Can't wait.
Absolutely. So let me go ahead and make sure we're in the right place and I have this all going. So if you have any questions, go ahead and type those into the chat panels that you do have. I'll make sure we go ahead and answer those during or after the webinar, depending on if we can get to it or not. But without further ado, let's get going.
Perfect. So first thing I want to do, well, my name is Mark. It's probably our third time together. And we've been through data and people. So we're going to do process today. But the first thing I want to do is set the record straight. What's the meaning of product data management, or PDM? In my experience, people generally have different views on what PDM is and what it can be used for. So for this webinar right here, we'll define PDM as a strategy for managing your product-related data and information along with your engineering processes, all in one single location.
I think that's the key here, right, is having it in one location. That's the first thing you want to get started with, because if you have disparate data, you don't know what source is correct. And exactly. I've seen customers run into that. I'm sure you have too, Mark, and I'm sure there's some people on the calls like, I can relate to that. There's two of the same drawing and they're in two different locations. Which one do I use?
Yeah, and also for searching, you don't have to worry about searching on C drive, Z drive, T drive. Everything is in the vault, so it makes it even easier. So PDM comes down to three things. We talked about it: data, people, and process. So data is all about managing the files and metadata that you make up the source code for, that make up the source code for your product. Apologize for that. People is about the challenges your engineering and non-engineering staff have while developing the product, and process is about the challenges with maintaining standard procedures throughout development. Now, I know we've been through this graph before, but product complexity has increased, but the business of developing and delivering new product has also increased across multiple dimensions. The market is more dynamic, with 70% of companies saying that customer needs or requirements are changing more rapidly. And about a third say that it has increased significantly. Manufacturing products have also gotten more dynamic. Over 1/3 have increased contract manufacturing, but more telling is that the majority have experienced more dynamic supply chains. 56% say they have more frequently supply chain or manufacturing partners changes. All of them have seen continuing increases in globalization and the demand for customization. Each of these is challenging, but it's important to recognize these challenges are happening at the same time. You don't get to choose. its cumulative increase in complexity, and it is enormous. PDM is about more than managing your CAD files and helping people collaborate and work efficiently. The second phase is looking at the engineering workflows and processes that are centered around the data, such as managing changes, design reviews, project management, and bills of materials, the almighty BOM. According to surveys, companies have challenges with managing change and design projects. These engineering processes are essential, and managing them effectively can have high returns. Compliance is also a major issue, with more than 1 in 3 companies reporting challenges with understanding requirements, lack of defined processes for managing compliance, and determining current compliance status. Now, you know that every time we do these, I have questions for you. I love challenging you in a good way. So how do you handle change and release today? Think about it. Are these processes efficient? Do they include all necessary parties? Can managers and executives easily see current project status? Now, those questions, those questions should pretty much tell you if you should maybe think about changing your PDM strategy. But they are very important. You should think about it, and if you don't know the answer, ask your colleagues.
Absolutely, and I think it's a great exercise to, even if you do have the answers to those and you're already developed a formal data management strategy, to every once in a while revisit some of those questions, right? How are we managing the processes? How are we managing some of these external collaborators? Things along those lines, to make sure that as time moves on, you're keeping updated to some of the technology, what's available out there, as well as making sure that you're moving in the right direction to keep all of your data secure, and all of your processes as efficient as possible.
All right, and now again, it's all in the spirit of challenging you, again, in a good way, but the source of process inefficiency is often highlighted by the inability for non-engineering or non-technical staff to participate. For design reviews especially, getting guidance from multiple points of view can be extremely valuable, but often is not done because it's too challenging to provide the necessary data and collect their feedback. Now, from a project management perspective, when multiple versions of a design file exist on a shared folder, it is nearly impossible to understand whether one has been released and what changes occurred from one to the next. Often, bill materials are manually managed in a spreadsheet that is disconnected from all the design data and business systems that rely on it. And also, managers cannot monitor overall project status because there's no central place, a single source of truth, to review progress of all the data being created. Again, questions about that. Do you still have paper processes for approval? How do you denote files are released or the work in progress? How do you make sure that your colleagues or coworker and teammates see what's been released or work in progress? Does manufacturing request clarification from design after changes? Do you have to migrate data manually into other formats? Now, this one, I'm sure we would get a majority of hands risen if we would ask that. But a lot of time people have to do this manually, convert files and put them in different folders or locations.
Yep, or emails or FTP sites. I've heard everything. And a lot of times, like I have, and for a lot of my sheet metal customers, I'll give an example for this before we move on. There's a lot of my sheet metal customers, right? It's like, hey, we build complex sheet metal assemblies, right? And they're built out of dozens, if not hundreds of pieces of sheet metal that are cut and bent, so on and so forth. Well, you've got your 3D model. What's important to the machine shop is the flat patterns. And to be able to get those flat patterns to the machine shop from your assembly, sometimes that's very difficult. Sometimes you have to manually export the DXFs individually once you open those flat pattern files. Sometimes you can use some of the Autodesk nesting software to be able to do that. But ultimately, right, there is a step involved that is sometimes, most oftentimes manual, to take your 3D model to get them to the machine shop. And that's something that you want to think about and make sure you're kind of making that process as efficient as possible with the data and the technology available to you. And that's some stuff we'll share here in a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And also, when I was working in the industry, I was working for a battery company. We were doing the batteries for a French electric car company, and we would keep, we were using a PDM system. I was a CAD manager, so I made sure everything was fully functioning. But we would keep the PDF of all the releases in one single folder. And we realized that the shop floor manager was dyslexic because he uses revision 01 instead of revision 10. And you can imagine how much money that cost. So again, it's not because you have a PDM system that you're perfect, but it sure helped. I can tell you that.
Absolutely.
All right. 31% of the companies surveyed reported challenges with review, sign-off, release process. Managing manufacturing processes and handling the many changes involved in producing components. Those difficulties are strongly linked to the compliance burden. In short, compliance is specifications, policies, and standards. It's the internal regulations that dictate how you do business, handle projects, and how you ensure your customer satisfaction. The audit trail. So, questions for you, and then I'll stop talking, I promise. How would you characterize your ability to ensure compliance? Do compliance issues slow down your development process? Have compliance issues resulted in lost business or customers? The almighty maintenance book that needs to be delivered at the same time of the project. That's part of the compliance as well. Last slide, promise. And an often cause of compliance issue is simply not knowing what the requirements are. Documentation may be scattered in different locations, make it difficult to access quickly. Management should be able to run reports on all components in a product quickly without requiring extended effort by the engineering staff to collect data. It can be challenging first to define your standard business processes, but proving that they are being followed is even more difficult. Imagine a history of all your development processes should be easily accessible in case of an audit. Now, and I'll finish with those questions. Where is your compliance documentation stored? Is it easily accessible by all who may need it? Are you able to easily track, monitor, and create reports for your products? How do you define, distribute, and ensure your business processes are being followed? Is your product design history stuffed in filing cabinets? Don't laugh. I know you have a filing cabinet somewhere in your business.
Absolutely. And I walked into a customer's site a couple of months ago now, maybe 2 or 3 months ago now, and they're using Vault. I'm like, where do you keep your legacy data? And they're like, oh, it's on the shop floor. It's like, what do you mean the Vault's on the shop floor? And I go into the shop floor and there's, maybe 50 or 60 filing cabinets. Like, that's our legacy data.
Sweet.
Okay. That's the old Vault. It's like, okay. So now that Mark's kind of gone over some of these and kind of put some questions in all your heads thinking, how am I going through the process now? How am I going and developing some of these things? I'll go ahead and go through some of the really key ones that I've talked to some of my teammates and some customers about over the last couple of weeks, some of the major ones that really struck home for people, and then how formal PDM kind of solves those issues or helps you, be more efficient in regards to those areas. So numero uno, I think this one is relevant to just about everyone I talked to. Is non-engineering staff can't participate efficiently in design reviews and approvals. And so that meaning is, there's people in either the shop floor, in sales, quoting, whoever those people may be, purchasing. Maybe those people need to be part of design reviews. Maybe they need to be part of approvals. Is this thing manufacturable? Can I order this component? Is this component cost efficient versus another one? Things along those lines. How do you get those people access to the documents when they maybe don't have a CAD tool directly on their computer? Couple things you can do about that, right, is to get those people involved in things like Vault ECOs or ECOs in general, if they're formalized, is get people involved in change notices, change orders, all those things, and then providing those people with easy viewers. to be able to see the CAD documents and review the files as needed. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So a critical component is helping everyone review and mark up those designs. It can be done in a couple of ways, whether it's inside the vault itself or through a free viewer. I know ECOs I mentioned is a really big component of this. I'm going to skip that for now. That's a really long conversation to have. But if that's something you want to look at, formalizing the ECO process, I'm more than happy to go over that with you separately from this. So this is the Vault Thin client. It is built into your web browser. As you can see, I'm just in Internet Explorer right now. And I have full visibility into my drawings, all of the files within my vault that I give myself access to via some of the security. In most cases, you want those people to have access to things that are released, especially if those people are on the shop floor. You want them to build, a released file. It's just a viewer online, right? I can see the full drawing. I can see the bill of materials. I can see the full file history. Here is just my item master, similar to what we have in Vault, and we can even delve deeper into that, see the files, take a look at them, and then look at some multi-level bill of materials as well. So I think we're going to go ahead and print that here on the next page. You've got your bill of materials, and it's an expanded view, so you can see all of that stuff with all of your relevant information, right? The file name, right? Things like quantity, things like the revision level, and descriptions. That's all here, and that's all available within the web client for Vault. So that's one way to be able to get some of those people access, because I think the most key component of all of the files in your Vault that people outside of engineering need, 99% of the time, it's the bill of material or a visualization of the file. I would say in most cases, and sometimes they need a PDF, but that's completely different. We'll go over that later. But those are some really key things. So that's one way to solve it. One way to look at it is to be able to use some of those web viewers or get them involved in the change order process. Two, right, part of the process, managers or other people can't easily monitor the overall project status. And so moving through a project, right, sometimes you're going to have your supervisor ask you, it's like, okay, so how are we doing on that project, right? That's a really nebulous question. It's like, okay, how do I answer that? We're doing good, I think is what I hear a lot. Well, wouldn't it be great to understand like exactly how far you are in the process, whether that's pulling reports, whether that's live dashboards, and understanding like, hey, are we completed? Have we released most of the files in the assembly? Maybe 50 or 60%, you can have a more solid number and understanding of how far you actually are. And so solution to that is you got full visibility in Vault to everything that a manager wants to, whether they're CAD user or not, as well as things like reports and dashboards. And so Vault reporting is something I see that isn't used as much as I think it could be. And then dashboards, I've built some custom ones. You can use some in Vault as well. Pretty simple to be able to understand where files are at in the process. So let's go ahead and take a look. I got a couple of screenshots. I figured it's a lot easier to go ahead and show this than to do a little demo on reporting, because it's one of the, I would say, unsexiest components of Vault. Very important, not glorious to look at in regards to the process. So here on the far left, we got a bill of materials report. And like I said before, most of the time, the important things to people are what's on the bill of materials. So you can pull reports directly out of Vault about the bills of materials themselves. The one in the middle is kind of cool visualization to be able to show what files are checked out by what components, what files are checked out by what people. You can understand what revision, what lifecycle state those are all in. It's all customizable. So you can see in that middle, right, is we got a couple files checked out by some different people. And maybe, let's say, for example, all of these files were checked out by Nigel, but Nigel said he's done with them. So what's going on, right? This gives people full visibility into what's going on at any given time. And then last but not least is the advanced search functionality in Vault. Definitely one of the most powerful components to Vault itself is the advanced find functionality. Search by pretty much any property within Vault. And you can generate auto reports from this. You can generate search folders, things along those lines. So if that's something you're not using on a daily basis, at least the search functionality in general, I would consider looking into how you could further utilize that, because it's so important. I don't think I can emphasize that anymore. Let's continue to look at the process, right? So let's look at compliancy, right? So producing audit trails and history of product data and documentation, like Mark said, audits, right? The big scary audit. You want to make sure that you have all of your ducks in a row when going through these processes. I know that it's caused a lot of headaches for people in the past, but it's also been relieved for a lot of people in the past by using formal data management, whether that's Vault or another form itself. So within Vault, all previous versions and revisions are maintained in the database for future reference, right? So they're easily accessible just in case of an audit situation. Additionally, Vault helps meet various data management standards throughout the industry. So think of things like ISO certification. If you've heard the word ISO, you've heard things, if you've read awesome Six Sigma books, all of those fun stuff, you'll realize like, hey, I need some formal form of data management to be able to meet some of these standards. If you know, you know. If you don't, it probably doesn't relate to you. So in terms of like the ISO standards and stuff. So I'm gonna, for the sake of time, I'm not gonna show multiple versions or revisions. Hopefully we all know that Vault can manage versions and revisions, and you can see them all because you have full design history. Kind of an extension to that, right? Another problem being it's difficult to interpret lifecycle states when there are multiple versions of a design file, whether that's multiple versions of a design file in the same folder that have slightly different names to kind of denote what state or what revision they are, or if they're in disparate locations, right? Which one is the single source of truth? Which one do I use? So, it's the same kind of concept, right? So Vault is that single source of truth. You have version and revision control. Additionally, right, you've got the ability in Vault to restrict yourself from loading duplicates. So that if, you've got a bunch of different files in different locations, you make sure that, you assign one of those files to be kind of the master in that case, and you don't put different versions of the same thing within the database. All right, I think this is the last example. Another problem that I've heard a lot from my conversations with customers prior to having this, as well as some people on the team, is those outside of engineering require generic file types or different file types than your standard CAD file types of DWG, IDW, et cetera, et cetera. The most common ones being PDF, DXF, STL, step files, et cetera, right? And so great solution to that, right, is to automatically generate some of those auxiliary file types and have them remain synced with the actual drawings or the CAD models themselves. So if something changes on the drawing, something changes on the CAD model, those auxiliary files also get changed. And that's something you can do with Vault to be able to get those people who are outside of engineering and design the files that they need at any time. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. This is something that's we've done in the past as super custom stuff, but something that Autodesk has been developing themselves over the last couple of years to put directly into Vault. So some of this stuff, actually all of the stuff that I'm going to show on the next slide here, or the next little video here, is stuff you can do today with Vault Pro out of the box with a little bit of configuration. So let's go ahead and take a look. So some Vault 2020 stuff. There's some PDF enhancements. They started this in 2019. Essentially, you can create your drawing views. This is pretty normal to everybody, right? Just generate your drawing view. I've got my drawing. Cool, I'm done. I'm going to check this into the Vault with all of the components. Hey, I've completed this drawing. It's going to send the file to the Vault. It's going to load it. Awesome. Well, as you can see, here's my folder. Whoops, let me go back here and I'll jump back to that place, and I'm going to pause that. So I've got my folder here, right? And I want to go ahead and kind of customize some of the fields. Well, as you can see here in this folder, I've got my assembly, I've got numerous drawing files, so on and so forth, but none of these files pertain to what my, say, vendor needs, right? Those people, maybe they need a PDF file from here. So right here for this example, we're just gonna go ahead and edit some of these fields. There is a field called has drawing. I'm gonna go ahead and add that. And so what that does is adds a glyph to the Vault browser, not the browser, the center area, right? And gives you that icon if that assembly file has a drawing associated to it, which is really cool. So there's this really cool button in Vault 2020 that says generate PDF. And I'm gonna pause that for a second. Up here, hopefully you guys can see my cursor. It's this red box right here. You can create a PDF on command in Vault for DWGs and IDW files. So just click the file, auto-generate PDF on the fly. At will, essentially, right? And it creates that PDF. Essentially, you look down here, it added .dwg.pdf, right? It just added a PDF extension to it. It's the same file type, it's just a PDF of that file. And that's one way to do it, right? Is you can manually generate the PDFs. And as you can see, there's versions of that PDF too as well. You can select multiple. You can do the same thing, create PDF. If I refresh this, it's going to have multiple as well. But I think even more powerful than creating some of these PDFs on the fly is to have it auto-generate the PDFs on things like lifecycle state change. And I think that's really big. Right here in this example, right, they're going to move the PDF location to another folder, and they're going to go ahead and send these over to that. So send these, change the state. We're going to go ahead and change it to release, right? These files are completed. I'm going to generate those. It locks the files as expected, right? It's in a release state. But let's go ahead and look at the V drive on the computer, right? It's got a bunch of folders, or just one folder with a bunch of PDFs in it. And that PDF matches everything on the CAD file. Coincidentally, right, if that CAD file changes and goes back into work in progress and then back to released, that PDF will update if you configure it to do so. And I think that's really powerful in this case, something that I'm seeing being utilized a lot by our customers. I see is really valuable.
Yeah. And that was part of, every time you have to convert your files and put it somewhere else or in a different folder, that can be done automatically. So that's, just think about it, how many times per day, per week, per month you do PDFs and how much money that would equals to. So very interesting.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, you go into Vault or you go into Inventor, you go to AutoCAD, you do a save as PDF, you load that thing into that location. Maybe that takes you 30 seconds to a minute, but what happens if you do 100 drawings in the course of a week, right? That's a lot of time that could be saved by automatically having that stuff happen. And it takes a couple minutes to set it up. So definitely take a look at that if you haven't already. Additionally, for things like step files and stuff, that can be configured as well. Essentially, it's the same thing, but just go ahead and ask us how to do that. And there's some ways to that we can tackle that problem for you. So we've kind of reached the end of the examples here, and I think let's loop this all together, right? Is Mark and myself, we've been on webinars here for just short of 3 hours, I would say, during this whole course. And we've gone over the business, data, people, and process, all of these things that are important to developing a product data management strategy for your organization. Hopefully we've sparked some ideas. Hopefully we've lit a fire under some people to make sure that, hey, let's go ahead and revisit this. Maybe we are using a formal PDM system, but are we really leveraging everything that's possible from it? Are we seeing some of the same issues that other organizations have expressed? And how do we go ahead and alleviate some of those problems? So we went over the data, right? That's the meat itself, right? Is the files themselves. How do you manage those files? The people, right? How do we make sure that the security is all correct? How do we make sure that the right people have the right access at the right time? And then the process today, how do we make sure it's all compliant? How do we make sure that it's all as efficient as possible? And hopefully we helped everyone kind of understand what's possible, what's out there, and some things to look at. Anything else to add here, Mark, before moving on to the next slide?
No, that's exactly it. Hopefully we make you think about your processes and the way you work. It's not, we're not saying it's bad or it's wrong, but it could be better, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Everything is, I don't think anything will ever be optimized. I think because the technology is always improving, there's always something new to add. So it's always good to every once in a while, maybe you were optimized in 2016, right? There's new technology that comes out every couple of months. Make sure that, some of that technology can't be leveraged to make your system more efficient. So take a look every once in a while. It's good to revisit it. Yeah. So let's take a look. I'm sure this question is going to come up a lot. What of this stuff is available in Vault Basic, Vault Professional, and Vault Workgroup? I would say, I think the most important thing here on this is the bill of materials and items management. That is one really key thing that Vault Professional does that the other two systems don't, strictly because of the addition of items. So if that's something you want to be able to manage in Vault, not have those disparate spreadsheets that you have to maintain separately from the files themselves, take a look at some of the stuff within items in Vault Pro, really key. And then revisions and life cycles, right? You want to be able to control some of that security. We talked about a lot about that before in the people section that we did last time. And that's all Vault Workgroup, Vault Pro stuff too. If you have any questions about what version of Vault does what, any of those things, let me know, or go ahead and type the questions in. We can go ahead and answer those for you. So let's go ahead and move on. So let's move on to questions. I know there's a couple that came through. I want to make sure I answer them all. Let me make sure there aren't any on YouTube. Let's go ahead and take that first. All right. So for reviewing inventor files, what is there one single viewer for IPT, IAM, IDW, and DWG files for non-CAD users? Mark, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, well, we're always yeah, that's going to sound so political, but we're always working on new strategies and new ways. Design review is something that's part of Vault and is great for reviews. It can be saved and added to the Vault afterwards. We also have ways to connect the Vault to our cloud solutions and like Fusion Team. And that way, it's also a way to collaborate with outside the firewall. So if you have collaborators in other facilities or other offices, you can always use the Vault and replicate the Vault, or you could use Fusion Team connected with Vault to simply share release documents or even portion of the Vault with outside collaborators. So
absolutely,
we do have different solutions for that. It's always depending on what's your favorite one.
Absolutely, and Doug, there's a couple of different ways you can do that. Depending on what those people need to do to review those files, will determine what viewer you should or shouldn't use. But definitely there's viewers to do all of that stuff. There's multiple viewers that will do all of those file types by themselves. So you don't have to use multiple. Just it's probably a bigger conversation to be had to understand exactly what those non-CAD users are doing, and how that works. And then there's like inventor read only too. You can do that too. So yeah. Inventor read only mode. That's something that's new. I would take a look at too. That's really one of my favorite things actually.
And I don't know, you might be, and that's going to sound so corny, but right after this presentation, I'm doing another one that's basically talking about collaboration inside the firewall and outside the firewall. So if you registered, and it's going to be right after we're done with this one, and we're going to talk about how to use our different solutions that you may have right now to collaborate with people around you.
Absolutely. And I think that's really key, right? Is the movement of data through the organization, right? And that's a problem that I think will be forever. Is how do we move, not a problem per se, I think an obstacle, let's say it's an obstacle, is how to move data throughout the organization, right? Throughout the enterprise, whether that's internally, whether that's externally, whether that's to engineering, outside of engineering, whether it's engineering data or not. There's always an obstacle. It's like, how do we manage the movement of data? And things like email and stuff, super archaic. Things like printed documents putting on people's desks, even more archaic. We got technology, let's use it, people. So if you got questions about that, that's things we tackle on a daily basis, right? And we kind of start with some of the engineering data and how does that move out and kind of, go further and further out to things like quoting and stuff. So, all right. Cool. Matt Reed just posted that. Awesome. Thank you, Matt. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, and that's the session that's coming up here. Thanks, Matt. I'm going to go ahead and paste this because I think it's important. Let me go here, and that's this class right here. Cool. So some AU class that is really powerful as well. So some people are asking, looks like they're asking about A360, and is that still a thing? Mark, I think you answered that as well.
Yeah, I think I answered it wrong. I don't, if you don't see it, the answer is yes, A360 is still a thing. It's just named Fusion Team now.
Yep.
It's the same features, just different name.
Absolutely. And it has, instead of an A in the top corner, it's an F. And if you're in the building information modeling, the BIM, the architecture environment, you'll see some of that as BIM 360 products as well. Yeah. So for those of you who are looking for A360, what does that become? It is name changed essentially into Fusion Team BIM 360 Team. So, and then I've got a question from YouTube here. Let me pull it up. I got a message from that. So It's about elevations and rotations in Inventor. Go ahead and email us for that question that's coming from YouTube. That's probably a bigger conversation to be had. I'm essentially asking about the process between going from Inventor to AutoCAD and then back into Inventor. So I want to look at that workflow. If you're going from Inventor to AutoCAD to Inventor, there might be a more efficient way to do that than to use two applications and start and end with the same one. So let's go ahead and take a look at that offline. Anything else? I'll give everyone another 30 seconds or so to answer any more questions or ask any more questions. And in that time, Mark, do you want to add anything? I know this is part 3 of this webinar.
Yeah, I don't know if that new solution was out when we did the second one, but we just came out with a solution called Vault PLM. It's basically connecting Vault and Fusion Lifecycle, our PLM solution. So it's a bundle, it's a package, but with the connector to connect the two. So stay tuned. We might have an AVA about it in the near future. But first and foremost, I wanted to wish everyone a happy 2020 year. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for joining us. I'm very pleased and very, very glad that I was part of this thing. And I just want to thank everyone for this. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. It's the community that keeps us going. And I think with the Vault and PLM connection, that's something that is really key to a lot of people. Yeah. And for those people who are always asking, and you know who you are, those people who always ask about whether or not the ECO and Vault is going to be more configurable, here's your solution. Is you could use the ECO solution in Fusion Lifecycle, which is 100% configurable. You could have 100 ECO states if you want.
Yes.
And then connect that to your Vault data. So definitely keep a lookout. We're going to be doing some AVAs on the connection between Fusion Lifecycle, which is a PLM system, which is Product Lifecycle Management, different than PDM system. So keep that in mind as well. But I think that's it for questions. I didn't see any more come through. If you do have any more, go ahead and email me. You have my email address, or go ahead and email questions@ketiv.com. We'll go ahead and address those there. I'd like to say thank you to Mark. I know we both have to run because we both have webinars and meetings right after this. So busy times. Yeah. So again, thank you for everyone in the community to join us for this 3-part AVA. Hopefully, it got some of the gears in your mind turning. What are we doing internally here at our organization, and how can we improve how we're managing the data? So again, thanks everybody for joining us. Mark, I can't thank you enough. Definitely been a pleasure, and we'll see you on AVAs in the future, I'm sure.
Thank you very much once again.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. Adios. Bye-bye.
Bye.